Okay, so we're starting here with the causes and effects of the American Revolution. This, of course, is a causation essay prompt. And the prompt is asking for both causes and effects. So I'm going to plan on making these my two body paragraphs. Okay, so this stuff down here is my brainstorm. This is what I thought of when I was thinking of what do I know about the American Revolution and why it started. I know that people were angry, and I knew it had something to do with taxes, and really the Stamp Act was the only specific tax that I came up with. I wrote Boston Tea Party, but if I think about it, the Boston Tea Party is not an example of a tax. It's really kind of proof that they were angry. So I'm not going to use that as evidence of why the revolution started if I'm going to focus on what made people to be angry, okay? I also know that the British were abusing the rights. This might come up maybe in analysis because, again, it's not a specific piece of information I can use for proof. At first, I thought maybe the people being angry would be kind of the whole focus for this causation. And then I realized when I looked over here, I didn't really have enough information to spread out. Remember, I'm going to want to have evidence in a body paragraph in two places. And I didn't think that the Stamp Act was really enough to go on. So what I decided to do was make it a sort of a two-part causation. So then I moved down farther on my brainstorm here and looked at also this idea about philosophers and the Enlightenment. So what I'm going to come up with is sort of a two-part reason for why the revolution started. The first is that people were angry. And then the second, so this is going to be, the subject of my first evidence. And then the second is going to be kind of where did they get the idea to have a revolution? And that makes sense because you can have people angry about lots of things, but without these ideas from philosophers like these guys, they're not going to do anything about it. So this way I'll be able to talk about the Stamp Act, and I'll also be able to talk about no representation as, kind of two reasons why they were angry. And then I can come down here and use these philosophers as where the inspiration came from. That way I've got, maybe two pieces of evidence here, and then I can have 2 or 3 pieces of evidence down there. So I think this is going to work out pretty well for my first body paragraph about causes of the American Revolution. Okay, so now these are going to be my analysis questions, and this is something you'll need to think about to kind of round out this paragraph. I had already established that people were angry. Remember, I had some ideas about how I was going to prove that. The question is, for the small y, why did the British do that? So if I'm talking about the Stamp Act, remember, in my small y, I'm just saying why did the evidence happen, okay? Down here is where I talk about, this philosophers right here should say colonists. So down here is where I'm getting at why the revolution happened, okay? And I'll be coming back to the idea of what caused the revolution. So for the small y, why did the British tax the colonists? What was their reason for doing that? It's kind of shifting the focus here from the British, and then down here we'll be talking about the colonists. And then for my second half, remember it had to do with the philosophers. Why did the philosophers have these ideas? What was, kind of, where were they coming from? And I might be talking about the Enlightenment there. Enlightenment. So that would be what would round out the analysis for the first body paragraph. So now we're in my second body paragraph, and now we're talking about the effects of the revolution. So this is some information I came up with in my brainstorm. I knew that they formed a new country. Things like the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, I knew were features of that. And to me, those are could be evidence of the fact that they had democracy. This is some information about who did the voting. I also know that kind of outside the revolution that they inspired some other revolutions to happen. So maybe I'll be able to talk about that. I know that the colonists moved to the west. I know that America expanded. And I also know that there were wars following the American Revolution, for instance, the Civil War. So I've got to look at all this information and think about where it's going to fit in my analysis of what the American Revolution resulted in, or what the effects were of the American Revolution. And I think that this idea of a new political system is probably going to work the best. And I might be able to use these two, for instance, as my first evidence. And then to describe that system, I could look at this down here, and talk about the voting. And I think it's worth pointing out that originally only the upper class was able to vote. And I think this part down here, maybe I might be able to save from my big Y in terms of, maybe my sort of evidence can focus on sort of effects in the United States, and then my big Y can focus on, the world, or at least, I guess, if I look at my list, the Americas, and I guess then France, and also Europe. Okay. So maybe we'll take a look at that, and we'll go to the next slide and see what that's going to look like for our analysis. So for my analysis, if I have a new political system, and again, that was the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the things we talked about in the previous slide. For my small y, I'm just relating right to this evidence. Why did the colonists create these things? What was their thinking? Why have a Constitution? Why have a Bill of Rights? Why allow people to vote? And then for the big Y, I'm going to look big picture at the inspiration. And why is it that what the Americans did inspired people in other places? And I might want to think about what's going on in those places. What's happening in France that is similar to what happened in the US. And if I do this, I can even be kind of connecting it back to my causes, because if there's going to be inspiration happening, I think that there needs to be something in common. The French issues with their government have to be somewhat similar to what issues the Americans had with their government. And those questions taken together are going to round out this paragraph and the whole essay about the causes and effects of the American Revolution.
You say you want a revolution.